In this video, I'll be going over my thoughts and impressions of Devastation Evoker after playing with them on the beta. Before we get to that though, a lot of my viewers aren't subscribed, so if you're watching and you're not subscribed, consider leaving a sub. It really helps me out and doesn't really cost you anything. We're moving up past 2,000 and it would mean a lot to me if we hit that before Dragonflight. I'll have a ton of great content coming out then, so if you enjoy it, please consider subscribing and enjoy the video. Devastation Evoker is the DPS spec for the new class Evoker, obviously, coming in Dragonflight. And honestly, I think the class is pretty fun. It has some nuance to it, it has a lot of utility. Its damage profile is interesting. I do think, however, there are some weaknesses, but it certainly has some strengths. So we're going to get into that. So the first thing you kind of notice with Devastation Evoker, looking at their class tree, is simply just the wide dearth, I know I use the word dearth, of CC and utility that they offer. They have stuff like Expunge, which is just a poison effect cleanse. They have healing through Verdant Embrace, and they have reasons to actually want to use that healing with Scarlet Adaptation. They have a bunch of other utility too. They have Cauterizing Flame, which is basically a Kyrian potion on another ally, which is kind of crazy. It doesn't remove magic, but everything else it removes. They have stuff like Sleepwalk, which is a hard CC. It's an in cap that moves the target towards you, which is really, really good. They come baseline with stuff like a knockback and a knock up, and the option to make either one of those better. They also get stuff like Tip to Scales, which is just movement for themselves, which I guess isn't really utility, but whatever. They get mana regen for a healer in raids. They get stuff like Oppressing Roar, which is really unique. Basically what it does is it's a 2-minute cooldown that whenever you roar, it increases the duration of CC effects by 50% in the next 10 seconds. So if you roar here, and let's say someone uses a 3-second AoE stun, it will be a 4.5-second AoE stun instead of a 3-second stun because of Oppressing Roar, which is really unique, and it also comes with an Enraged spell if you want to target talent into that. They have a stun with their Deep Breath. They have something that can break shields, which is interesting and potentially useful. They have Rescue, which is a target moving ability that also gives you a shield if you use it. They have Time Spiral, which kind of resets you and your allies' movement ability, which is kind of really cool. And they have stuff like Zephyr, which is like an uplifting draft that you and 4 nearest people kind of get like a movement speed and a reduction in area of effect attacks. And they also have a kick in the tree. So healer gets this too. So really they have just so many different utility options, CC options, kind of just threw them all at you there. But they really have tools to help out your party and your group in almost any scenario. They also excel really well at off healing if that's needed. They have stuff in the class tree like increasing their Emerald Bloom. They have stuff like Panacea, which heals themselves. They have Living Flame, which whenever you take Leaping Flames and Scarlet Adaptation ends up healing for a good bit, which you will take in M+, or in those scenarios where they cleave. So really, Evokers just have so much, including a root, Landslide, which is a pretty good root. It's like the Druid one. However, it does break a little bit easier, but you can talent into it if you want it to hold. So really, Evoker is just so rich with just their CC options and their utility options. They have tools for almost every scenario. They bring Lust, Rage of the Aspects, or Fear of the Aspects, or whatever, which is really good. They bring the ability to also, reduce your movement speed, which is not a DPS increase for most classes. However, it is a DPS increase for Demon Hunter, so that's cool. So they just bring so much. In terms of their spec tree and how they play, really they play mostly with stuff like Pyre in AoE and stuff like Disintegrate in single target. So you come down and you grab all your Pyre stuff and you grab your Disintegrate stuff. In single target, your damage revolves mostly around Catalyze and Feed the Flames. So you keep up Everburning Flame, not Everburning Flame, you keep up Fire Breath on the target, and you use Disintegrate to channel onto them, dealing more damage, generating your Essence Bursts inside Dragon Rage or without of it, getting more damage in Essence Bursts because of Titanic Wrath. So really, a lot of your damage comes from just that dot and from Disintegrate, which obviously it can't happen right now in pre-patch. So if damage is low in pre-patch, it's because we don't have all of the talent builds. In AoE, their damage is pretty much mostly the same. However, it's a lot more upfront burst because of their Mastery. So Mastery Giant Killer basically makes them do a ton more damage at the start of a pull, which lowers kind of linearly as they take more damage. So if you're doing 50% more at the start, when the boss is at half HP, you'll only do 25% more, right? So it works out like that. So really, they are their best whenever the pulls first start, whenever they can slam all those buttons into kind of the opening pull. They do a lot of damage then, and they fall off towards the end. Now, there is a way around that. Obviously, their cooldown Dragon Rage allows them to, when you take Tyranny, which you're gonna, for the most part, allows them to gain full benefit of their Mastery, regardless of the target's health, which is really good. So basically, let's say the boss is almost dead and your Dragon Rage comes up. Dragon Rage, basically at that point will give you like a 40% damage increase because it's allowing you to use your full mastery, and mastery is very good for Devastation Evokers. Now, I will say that on pull, Dragon Rage is obviously less powerful, so if you can delay it a little bit, you want to. But it still erupts 3 pyres, and it still gives you Essence Burst every time you use one of your fillers. Essence Burst is the mechanic for the class where the fillers kind of let you use your pyre or your disintegrate for free. So that's that. Making that kind of give you that ability to give you the free Essence Burst kind of gives you more usefulness of this talent in more scenarios, and then the pyres kind of make it useful in AoE, where generally you want to pop us at the start of pull with a ton of charged blast stacks if you can. It deals a lot of damage that way. And then you also just animosity charge spells, so your empowered spells are Eternity Surge and Fire Breath. So whenever you empower those within Dragon Rage, it extends itself. So you get this fun little playstyle of kind of extending your Dragon Rage and throwing out a bunch of empowered spells to reduce the cooldown of Feed the Flames and reduce the cooldown of Eternity Surge with Causality. So it was really a fun little playstyle loop there. I actually really enjoy the loop in single target. In AoE, it's pretty fun too. You just lob out a bunch of pyres. I think there's a lot of like nuance there. The rotation itself is pretty simple. You're just using your filler and then your spender, right? But because there's that simplicity, there's also a large amount of like depth in different scenarios. There's a different math on charge burst stacks, charge blast stacks, and your pyre depending on target counts. There's disintegrate clipping if you want to kind of clip your disintegrates early to get more causality, if you want to chain them to get kind of those ticks, or if you want to fill between them. There's a lot of nuance there. There's also tons of kind of player skill expression, which is a big thing that I really, really love. I love skill expression in their movement. So they move kind of weird. So Evoker move like Demon Hunters do, I think most effectively. So they move like Fell Rush, they have glide, stuff like that, because of hover. So hover is really, really powerful. It's not on the tree here, but I'll throw up a little thing. So hover, basically what it is, it's a charge forward, a certain amount of distance for if you're facing, or if you're not moving in a direction, it just kind of floats you in midair. That also allows you to cast while moving and gives you a movement speed increase if you grab the talents associated with it, and you can get 2 charges of it, you can last longer, etc. So this is really their main thing. It allows them to kind of move around, cast while moving, and do a lot of their damaging spells and like abilities like that on the move or very quickly. Now, the one thing it doesn't affect your charge spells, your empowered spells like Eternity Surge or Fire Breath. You cannot use those while under the effects of hover, which is definitely a downside, but it's not too big of a deal. Now, they have such a strong movement ability. They also have stuff like Verdant Embrace, which flies into an ally, and Rescue, which allows you to move pretty fast, as well as all those like movement speed resets because of how poor their range is. So Evoker as a class has 25-yard range for damaging spells, 30-yard range for healing spells. But does kind of reduce how well they can play. It reduces kind of their ability to move around the battlefield and hit targets. It's a little jarring at first when you first play with it. However, as you get more used to it, obviously it gets much better. But they have this strong movement to kind of offset that limited range. And I say it works pretty well. The downside is outside of that movement, you have a ton of really, really long casts, especially in single target. In AoE, you're just using Azure Strike, which is an instant, and then you're using Pyre, which is also an instant. Sometimes you throw it like a Living Flame here or there, but those are generally going to be instant because of Burnet, or you throw it like a Disintegrate, but that's normally at the end of a pack whenever there's like less targets or in single target. But in single target, your main filler is Living Flame, which hits really hard but is a long cast, especially because you take Engulfing Blaze, and then Disintegrate, which is just a long channel. So really in single target, unless you're moving with Azure Strike, you have a lot of really long casts, which I think is one downside of the class, especially with your empowered spells too. Now again, in single target, you normally only empower those to the first level, but in AoE, you generally want to empower them much more. So there are lots of times where, despite your really strong mobility, you are planted in place for pretty lengthy periods, upwards of 2 to 3 seconds at a time, which is quite long for something like WoW. Generally whenever a circle comes out, you only have a few seconds at most to react to it. So if there's something under you right as you're trying to channel cast something, or right as you start to disintegrate, you are going to lose out on most of that value if you don't move right away. So if you try and greet it, it will end up biting you in the butt and hurting. I think there's a lot of nuance with that though, allowing that skill expression to happen. There's also a lot of nuance on like delaying Dragon Rage, right? So if you have Dragon Rage in the opener and you're not lusting, then there's a good idea to generally delay it a little bit so you get some value out of the increased mastery. Because otherwise, Dragon Rage, yes, it gives you a bunch of essence bursts, but it's not too powerful outside of that if you don't get a tyranny benefit. I think that's definitely some downsides. So I think it has a really high skill cap, which is great. I love that. However, it has a really low skill floor as well, so players can pick it up and do reasonably well without that much like investment or that much trouble with it. So I think it's going to appeal for a lot of people. I do think its mastery is a little problematic in M+, because you do so much damage on pull. If you rip like a 20 charge blast, Dragon Rage on pull, and a bunch of targets, there's a very good chance you will rip threat from the tank. I think this is just something that needs to be done with tank threat. I think tank threat needs to obviously be touched and tuned up or tuned down. Not tuned down. Player threat, like DPS player threat, needs to be tuned down. Tank threat needs to be tuned up. Because realistically, I don't think DPS should be ripping threat off of tanks once tanks have gone in. So it leads to a scenario where you're either, ripping your cooldowns and you're ripping threat, or you're kind of waiting a bit, which does suck. You obviously want to rip them at the start of pull. Maybe some things have died by the time you actually, end up being able to throw them out. But that's really, I think, one of their biggest downsides, that and their cast times. They're mobile but immobile at the same time, which is kind of weird. So that's kind of their big downsides. But I think the nuance in their playstyle, and I think like just the wide array of CC and different utility options they have, makes them really, really fun. There's a bunch of talents too that are interesting. They have stuff that gives you more crit. They have stuff that channeling launches out more eternity surges, and they have ways of like messing with their essence generation. There are a few talents you don't take. You don't really take Firestorm or Snapfire, and you don't really take Everburning Flame. They're just used in like a more sustained cleave, which doesn't really happen. Shattering Star you do take in single target, and it's really unique, giving you a little burst window. But you don't take Power Swell, and you don't take Iridescence, which is just about like empowered spells and essence regeneration. You don't end up taking those. There are some options in the tree that you just don't take. But most of them you do end up, picking up here or there and giving you some pretty interesting options there. The final thing is their defensives are actually quite strong now. They used to be pretty weak. So baseline, they have a 75% armor increase because of their scales. Then they have access to Obsidian Scales, which is a 1.5 minute recharge, 30% DR for 12 seconds, which is incredibly powerful. There's also a talent that gives you another charge. So having 2 charges of this is really, really strong. They have tons of self-heal through Verdant Embrace, Panacea, and Emerald Blossom. And they also have something called Renewing Blaze, which, while it is powerful, it won't like save you if you're going to get hit by something big. What it does is, while it's active, all the damage you take is going to be healed back over 8 seconds. And you have the option of giving you Foci of Life, which increases your healing, or reducing it down to a minute. So it kind of gives you a ton of options there. You have the shield as well from rescue if you need it. But really overall, I think the class itself is really fun. I think a lot of people are going to end up playing it. I myself am planning on ulting it. I think the movement is quite fun. And I think the apparent, like shallowness on the rotation, like the simplicity of it, but as well as like the depth it gives, all your different thoughts on delaying Dragon Rage, on your pyre numbers, on the different disintegrate stuff you can do, on your movement. I think that really allows for a lot of skill expression that makes me enjoy the class. I think the class's visuals itself are also really, really good, but I do think there are some downsides in their long cast times, despite their movement and despite their, stuff like Tip the Scales letting them move more. Their empowered spells, which you do need to charge up, does kind of root you in place. There's stuff like Living Flame and Disintegrate also kind of roots you in place. So that's a downside. And then I think Dragon Rage and the Mastery as like a whole is a bit problematic, especially with how good it is. You end up ripping threat if you rip on a pull, but if you hold off and you wait, then you lose damage, and then single target, you kind of want to delay it. So that's a little bit weird there. But overall, as the first new class coming in a long time, I think it's really, really fun. I really, really enjoy it. And I think it's just kind of a blast overall. And I really hope people try it out. Obviously, I'm going to have more Evoker content on my channel. So if you want to see that, stick around, hit the sub button, all that kind of jazz. I really appreciate it. I really enjoy the class. You're going to see more of me playing this for sure. Not going to be on a name. Still going to be tons of Demon Hunter content, but I really am enjoying this. So if you want to know more, leave a comment down below, ask any questions. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and also drop a sub. I'll have maybe one more videos of these talking about Windwalker Monk. We'll see. But I'll have tons of more content coming up in the next few weeks. So stick around for that. I really appreciate all of you. Thanks for watching the video. Peace. I'll see you next time.